This is Curious Brain Thoughts.
Hello.
Hi, Paul. Why are you laughing?
I'm just feeling jolly.
Well, good. Jolly is what we want, because I'd like to welcome you and everybody else to Curious Brain Thoughts.
The show where two ordinary people talk about things they're curious about.
Amazing.
Lou, what is a curious brain fart?
Well, you kind of just alluded to it, Paul, really. It's a thought, a notion in one's brain, in your noggin, and you're curious about it. And so we think all sorts of curious thoughts every day, some of which we talk about on this podcast, and some of which people send to us. And so if you indeed have something that you're curious about, that you want us to talk about, just email us curiousbrainfarts@gmail.com.
Well, marvellous.
Marvelous.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. The sun is shining.
The weather is sweet, yeah. Makes you want to move.
Your dancing feet.
To the rescue.
There we are. Here I am. So,
Well, we're in lovely, sunny Gloucestershire.
we are in sunny Gloucestershire, in my lounge, with my dog, Nigel.
Who's being a good boy?
He's a very good boy. And so the country air has filled us with vim and...
Wind.
I was going to say vim and vigour, but wind, if wind is what you're full of, Paul, then
Well, it might be useful for a brain fart.
no change there. What brain fart, pray tell, are we going to talk about today?
Good question. Let's engage the random theme generator.
Random theme generator. Random theme generator.
We've had an email,
Ooh.
which was carefully sorted by the random theme generator, archived, classified, all different kind of categories.
Amazing.
And it's highly technical. It goes like this. To the Cerebral Pumpers, whoever they are. Firstly, congrats on a splendid podcast. Why, thank you, darling. Really enjoying listening to your inner head workings on various interesting subjects and the occasional side-eye laughing fit. Me and my wife are about to have our first baby and looking forward to the challenge of trying to keep a small human alive. That's important.
If you do have a small human, it's often best to do that.
When
Yes.
people ask questions otherwise. So best to do that.
Indeed.
As such, I would hereby like to suggest the subject of teamwork.
Ooh.
The benefits and, if there are any, the negatives. Looking forward to listening to more episodes. Keep up the good work. From Paul in Bristol.
Yes, Paul.
In Bristol.
Another Paul.
So, it's an interesting name. Paul in Bristol.
Now, here's a phrase to kick us off. A teamwork makes the dream work. Discuss.
Depends on the dream, I suppose.
What dream
Could be a nightmare.
What dream is it making work?
I think it's the Paul's point is interesting. The idea of teamwork and him tuning into the negatives and benefits. So why don't we start, as we mean to go on, with the definition of teamwork,
Very nice.
which obviously I've just got here.
Go.
The activity of working together in a group with other people, especially when this is successful. It's a noun. Amazing. Great teamwork and old-fashioned grit got the team a last-minute point.
Sorry, can I just pick something up in that definition? Did it say especially if it's successful?
It did.
So what is it if it's unsuccessful?
It's team didn't work. One might suggest. Her determination, teamwork skills, and leadership capabilities convinced us that she was perfect for the job. I just want to say they're lame.
Really lame.
Really lame.
I've got slight PTSD from, those personality things that you do at work sometimes that tell you your preferences. SN bloody blah, or the bell.
Disc.
Yes, bell bin, or are you red? Are you yellow? There's a load of them. I'm not saying they're all
Wrong.
crap, because I don't think they are. I think there's a lot of goodness in them. The thing that I think I struggle with is where people, and I think it's a natural need that we all have to put ourselves and others in a labelled box so we all know where we stand. And are you a completer finisher, or are you a... Sorry, the dog's making a horrible slurping noise. Nigel, stop it. That's slightly, I don't know. You're defined as a certain part of a team, and that's you. And I know that that's not the intention of these things. It's just supposed to give you a general theme or a general trend. But I think they can be weaponized or used in a way they weren't intended, which is maybe why I'm a bit like, I think they're a good way into the functions of a team, how that works or doesn't work.
Yes. Because teamwork is made up of more than one person. And so therefore the construct of that team is dependent upon those involved. So therefore there can be negatives to teamwork if you're in a position whereby those involved in the team just are not able to work effectively together.
Yes.
In collaboration.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, doesn't really matter. That can start to become, even if that's, say, in a group of 5, that's 2 people, that can become very disruptive for that group. So you can imagine if you're not able to find the right frequency of being able to work together, this can really create some challenges. So I think there can be negatives when we're not open to exploring ourselves. So often with all the stuff that we've talked about so far on the podcast, it's all about us and our own choices, the way we show up, our mindset, etc. And so the negatives, just like the positives of teamwork, come from the choices that we make, from the places we're coming from, the way in which we are willing to be flexible, or whatever it might happen to be.
Yes, I agree. And I think there's this much bandied phrase, high-performing team. And everyone, it's this kind of...
Nigel's moaning.
Sorry if you can hear the dog whining. I don't quite know what's wrong with him. What is it? This kind of the Elysium fields of a high-performing team. Well, when's the last time you said that you were on a high-performing team? I don't think that that's a constant state, is the point. And I think that any team can be high-performing or have a really rough patch. These things are not static, they're dynamic. Having said that, if the team doesn't have some of those fundamentals that you're talking about that enable them to be on a common frequency, then they're going to really struggle. So it might be interesting to just be curious about what they are, because if Paul and his wife are going to have a baby, that's new territory and challenging and all sorts of other things. If you don't have the foundations that you need, it gets tricky. So what are those things that enable, But over and above whether you're a completer, finisher, or an SNTJ or whatever, the things that are the foundations really of any team, whatever the people inside.
I think, for me, one of the important ones that we've talked about before is listening.
Pardon?
The ability to have a conversation with somebody where you are trying to really understand what's going on for them or where they're coming from or whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
And if I think about where I have been involved in successful teams, that's a very important trait.
Yeah. And I think for me that's linked into the two things that are in my head, which are communication, which is obviously listening, and then all the other things that go along with communication.
Like talking.
It's listening and talking, isn't it, really, if you think about it.
Drawing.
But it's like how the team communicates with each other, how they do that. And then I think the thing that enables that to be good, the listening and the speaking to be respectful and active and all of that good stuff, is the relationships. Do we trust each other? It doesn't mean you're my best friend necessarily, but do we trust each other? Are we all going in the same direction? So, and do we have the relationships that we need? Even if I think you're a bit of an idiot, which I don't, by the way, but let's suppose that I did think, oh, Paul's a bit of an idiot, but he's actually really brilliant at this bit, which is exactly what this team needs. So I can separate the person and the capabilities and just, be flexible enough. So I'm rambling, but what I'm really saying is communication and relationships are the foundation of any team.
I think another one for me that's really critical is self-awareness. Because as long as there is someone in the team, the bigger the teams get, the more self-awareness would be beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more people there are self-aware, the better, because this can help to navigate the challenges that come up when working in a team. Because someone will do something differently to you, someone will communicate differently, someone will prioritise differently, someone will present something differently.
Yeah.
And just knowing, why I find that person irritating, why I'm struggling with this thing, why this, why that, the other, is very, very helpful in setting up the ingredients of good quality teamwork.
Yeah. And if you think about your ability to understand and manage yourself, that's going to give you greater flexibility. So you don't, I think when people enter a team with rigid approaches, requirements, I'm on my frequency and my requirement is that you all tune into my frequency. And if if more than one person is doing that on the team, it's extremely disruptive and very, very difficult to move forward. So I do agree. I think that self-awareness links to flexibility, which enables you to, and it comes back to some of those games that we were talking about in one of the previous episodes. If you're self-aware, you can catch yourself as you start falling into some of these old habits, etc., etc., and you can do something differently. So self-awareness, flexibility, communication, listening, which is part of communication, relationships. Those are the things that immediately spring to mind as being the foundational parts of a team. Whatever your nature, personality, preference, doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting because in Paul's email he was talking about the positives and, if there are any, the negatives. And the benefits. The benefits, and if there are any, the negatives. Nigel's just keeping a watchful eye for us.
Good boy, Nige. He's woofing at something. So
I think the benefits, I mean, we could probably rattle off a whole load of those. The reason why I went in with the negatives first of all is because I was most curious about that. Because the benefits of teamwork can be huge, really huge. Because working in a team, maybe just with one other person, who is able to do something I can't, and I'm able to do something they can't, together we are able to experience something far bigger than ourselves, which is, that has huge potential, huge potential.
Yeah, it does. And, you are much, much greater than the sum of your parts, as it were, in the sense that the accelerating factor of those two different perspectives, those two different approaches, it's hugely magnified. It's not just 1 + 1 is 2. It's much, much more than that.
3.
5. 3's the magic number, so maybe it is 3.
Maybe it is.
And I was just talking to somebody this morning, one of my beautiful cadre of coaching people, and he was saying he works by himself, and he was saying the huge value of working with others, and that he proposed to one of somebody within one of his clients, can we work together on Friday? This guy almost bit his arm off because he's been working by himself for quite a long time, an extended period on this certain thing, and he was craving connection. We like to work with other people. I think as humans, it's a natural habitat for us, isn't it?
Yeah, it's part of our common humanity.
Yeah, we're tribes. We like a tribe, don't we?
And I was just thinking about how, there are so many challenges as well in working with teams, and we have talked about some of those. And the bigger the teams are, the more and more and more complex they become.
Yes.
So if you draw 3 dots on a page, you will have 1, 2 lines coming out from each dot, and that's everyone connected. If you put something like 5 dots on a page, I can't even do the maths.
It's exponentially huge.
It's not one more.
No.
It's a lot more. So all of a sudden, you've got all these connections everywhere that need to be managed or looked at and so on. So there is an optimum point at which teams can become too big. Now, I've worked in lots of big corporates and so forth, and in much smaller boutique outfits. I'm working with all sorts of different clients at the moment in different sizes of organisations, in leadership positions and so forth. One of the organisations was focused on the minimum span of control was 8 to 1. So for any one manager, there would need to be 8 people.
Right.
And when you then draw those 8 dots, and then they've all got to connect to each other. If you include the manager, that's 9. They need to connect to each other. That becomes very, very complex. So people have looked at it from a headcount perspective. So teams get too big. And if we have teams that are too small, then we get loads of overhead because we've got loads of managers and whatever. If you're looking at traditional hierarchy.
Yes.
And that's where it's kind of interesting with some of these other models like holacracy, where it's not about hierarchy.
No.
It's about capability and interest and moving into different domains of interest. And with that, you get a lot more sort of regulation of the sizes of teams and so forth that's just done naturally, internally. It doesn't require someone else to come along and go, that team's too big, because they manage themselves.
Yes.
So I do find all of this stuff very, very interesting. You know, you've got the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and you've got stuff by Stephen Covey and all sorts of other people. Yes, super duper. And then there are some fundamentals.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. And I think that one of the things that we've explored in some of the work that we've done with leadership teams is the concept of psychological safety, which in a nutshell is about being able to ask for help, or particularly make mistakes or take a risk without the fear of a negative consequence. If you're psychologically safe, you feel comfortable to put your hand up and go, listen, I took this commercial risk and it hasn't gone the way I hoped.
Or I disagree with what you've just said.
Yeah. If you're not safe, you would try and cover that up, blame someone else, or polish the turd of your decision and try and make it look good. So I think psychological safety is another one of those things that has to be there for the team to function. The other thing I'm really interested by is that you have these cultures within cultures. So you've got in an organisation the macro culture, which might be, and the only thing people might have in common might be, I don't know, the company values or the overall mission of the organisation, because everyone's doing different things in different areas and so on. But if you go and work in sales, or Terry's in charge of that team, and that's got one vibe and a different frequency. If you work in operations, well, that's where Jenny's in charge, and you know it's like 2 different organisations, and I think we can all relate to that as well. The power that those managers, those middle leaders have over the culture and the effectiveness of their teams.
So this is a really great topic, because it isn't straightforward. There are many, many dynamics that influence teams, the biggest of which is us.
Yes.
And how we choose to show up. So even in a team of 2, with Paul and his wife having their baby, that will start with them and how they each show up, and noticing how you're doing in a particular day, and the way in which you're communicating, and the type of relationship that you've built, and all the other different attributes that we were talking about. This stuff also applies when you're working in a bigger team.
Yeah. You look at a family unit as a team. Families are often referred to as team, you know, Jones or whatever. And I think that, I mean, I just think about our family. There's an overall vibe. And then each family, you know, your family's got frequency, my family and our brother and sister, their families all have their own frequency, and we all tap into the mothership, as it were, and have this shared experience and shared frequency, which isn't, it's not wholly any of us, but when we all put a bit into the centre, and therefore it's meaningful to all of us.
I think a good example of that is the family holidays that we do. So when we all get together, there's 25, 26 of us, which is our parents and everyone below. And that is an example of teamwork in a week, because we stay together, we eat together in shifts, because we can't normally all fit around one table. And, you know, everybody plays a different role each day. It's not like, oh, I do this and that's all I'm going to do. And everyone is aware, because of our relationships that we have with each other. We know when someone needs space, or when they need a cuddle, or whatever it might happen to be. And it's interesting to see how all that unfolds as well with the children.
Yes.
You know, the children. Some of them are 22. La la la. Anyway, so the point being is that, even the children from the 22-year-olds down, even they really enjoy these holidays because there is this ease in which us as a team, as a family unit, can be together for the week.
And it's really interesting to how different our experiences are based on what our home team looks like, if you like, our nuclear family team, because my family is small. I'm used to doing things a certain way, and it's simple things like, how much pasta do you cook for 25 people? The bigger families I've noticed they're much less of a struggle with that. My son is used to having his own space, quiet time, etc. He doesn't have any siblings, and so the push and pull of all of those dynamics in that team is it's a lot more for him than it is for some of the others, and it depends on their personality and their nature. However, my observation is it takes a few days to settle in, and then the machine really starts to rock and roll, and we've got people making sandwiches and people doing this and people doing that, because it takes us hours to get up and out in the morning, which means the people who get up first get the sandwich train moving, and then everybody does their bit. That's the point. It's an ecosystem, and your bit isn't necessarily the same. As the children have gotten older, they do the dishwasher and they do things that they never used to do, and it's like that with any team. It has to move and evolve and change with the circumstances. So the things that Paul and his wife are doing initially, they'll get used to things move and evolve, and you know what I mean? So the way that their team looks in 18 months' time will bear almost no relation to the way it looks week one.
Yeah, and I think the idea of, so if we think of this big team of 25, 26 people getting together for a week who know each other already, so we could already be working together, take it out of the family context, put it into a working context. Yeah. So we're getting together, maybe there's 10 of us in the team. It's not such a big number. Just noticing that a family unit who know each other very well, it takes time, a few days, for things to start ticking over, and there's a heavy push from a few, and then others start to pick up, and then the momentum builds and so forth. It's so important that there is time given to a team for there to be successful teamwork. So in order for a team to function well, they need to be able to spend time together, not trying to perform.
Yes.
They need to spend time together trying to connect and understand the lay of the land, and maybe try something and not do anything heavy. So, for example, it might be doing something that is very creative and can fill you with lots of ideas. It doesn't mean you've got to go down the bowling alley and do stuff like that. It could be still work focused, just in a very, very different way that puts everybody in a place where they are looking for these bids for connection, trying to understand, the working practices and so on. I
also think the and this came up this week actually for me, was this shared frequency that the team creates for themselves, which helps, and everybody has input. It's not something that the manager imposes on everybody else, and it's a set of boundaries. We understand where our collective edges are, which aren't the same as my individual ones or yours or whatever, and that can often be done implicitly. And I think it can be extremely useful to do it explicitly. Sorry about the dog, he's really annoying.
I think it's because we're gas bagging and we're not paying him any attention.
Yeah, he's whinging.
Yeah.
So to be explicit about the boundaries and where the edges are I think it helps the team to function as a collective contribution to and shared understanding of what that looks like.
Another element just popped into my head, which is I'm working with a senior leader who has about 4 or 5 direct reports, and then that team is very heavily distributed, and there are layers of leadership, and people are literally all over the place, not in one time zone, not in one country, all over the place. And, with everything being so distributed, with hybrid working or purely remote working or whatever, the complexities that can add to establishing good teams.
Yeah.
The point being, it takes a lot longer. So the expectation for a team to get up and running and really purring, if they only get to spend an hour a day at very different ends of the day because of their time zones, it's going to take a lot longer for a team to become effective. And so, in this example, that's just how the organisation is and the size of it and so forth. So you can't say, well, let's change it and put everyone in the same time zone. That just won't work.
No.
And so it does mean that creating like some of these shared charters and stuff become more important and take significantly longer.
Yes.
Unless you're willing to bring everyone together. So the cost of not doing that. So very often we've worked with lots of organisations over the years. T&E is too expensive to get everybody together. We're going to do it remotely and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, awesome. That's absolutely amazing. What you'll find is that the time to effectiveness, let's call it, is probably 30 times longer. Obviously, the bigger the team, the more complex and so on and so forth. Because creating those moments of connection that are based on building these relationships of trust and authenticity, understanding how we communicate with each other, knowing ourselves and how we are reacting in the presence of all these other people in these different situations, that takes time. And if you're not willing to invest in doing that up front, pulling the teams together to achieve something to set them off, and then off they go, just be prepared for it to take a lot longer and not to be as effective.
Yeah.
And that might be fine.
It might be. It absolutely might be. So, teams. Teamwork makes the dream work. Only if you're prepared to put the legwork into establishing
the dream work.
In other words, everyone can be on a high-performing team. However, it's not going to happen without real focus first on yourself and then on the shared dynamics that you intentionally create together. It's not magic. You just paid attention to the right stuff.
And on that note, we wish Paul in Bristol and his wife all the very best, and hopefully we'll hear more.
Yeah, amazing teamwork wishes to you.
That was good teamwork as well, by the way.
Right.
I mean, you can't do that on your own.
You're
anyway,
welcome.
Moving on. Bye now.
Pure Spring Thoughts.